Thanks to Mario, to Wes, and all you guys for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So this is the kO-R2, the second collaboration between myself and Klipsch. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Devon Turnbull. I am from Brooklyn, New York, and I have a long-standing practice of speaker building as a craft, as a hobby, and now as a career. I'm fortunate enough to call it my career. People ask me all the time, when did you start doing this? And I really don't know how to answer that question because I was always just the kid that would like open everything up and figure out how it works and try to sometimes, make it my own. But I've been doing for well over 20 years like a practice that looks just like this. For a decade or so, I couldn't get anyone to come over and listen or care at all about what I was doing. And very slowly but surely, things began, people started taking note and interest started to grow. I started, some friends that happened to be fairly influential started collecting my work as sort of functional art. And eventually I had an incredible opportunity to start showing with sort of like a blue chip fine art gallery in New York called, it's not Listen Gallery, it sounds like Listen, but it's Listen Street from London. Has nothing to do with listening, actually. Strange coincidence. But anyway, so Klipsch contacted me maybe 5 years ago to start working together. We worked on a project, a slightly smaller two-way speaker called the kO-R1. They've given me an incredible opportunity to work with the team in Hope, Arkansas. I don't know, I've never heard anyone at Klipsch say this, but I've been telling everyone it's the longest running, oldest speaker factory in the world. I can't imagine that there's an older, continuously operating speaker factory. It's 80 years old, called Klipsch, founded Klipsch in Hope, Arkansas. And there are a number of engineers there that were trained by Paul Klipsch, who's undeniably one of the most important speaker designers of all times. Patented many of the horn theories that all horn-loaded speakers are based on, and a lot of the most iconic speakers ever made. So they invited me into the team sort of to kind of rethink the way because Paul wrote this sort of script for like a very specific series of speakers. They kind of do that thing specifically, and what I do is similar. There are very few horn speaker manufacturers in the world that have the capabilities that Klipsch has, but my kind of intersection with them allows them to make things that Paul never made.
It was actually interesting seeing the kO-R1 for the first time, knowing the history of Klipsch and how much, even though the engineering team has a lot of they have a lot of ideas, as you know now, moving forward, seeing what they've done. But this was the very first departure, right, from Klipsch's manual.
Exactly.
Like, this is what we're going to do. This is the way we build speakers. And you see a speaker that utilized a lot of the similar componentry, but just reimagined. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, the kO-R1 is nothing more than, a rebadged Klipsch. I'm like, absolutely not. You must hear these speakers. From my perspective, we have 90 brands. So if I'm going to put it here and I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to showcase it, it has to have merit. It has to have something special. And for me, that speaker just blew me away. I loved it. So, it was a very, very popular thing. That thing moved very quickly. But it was the first time that I saw that brand was open to the potential of seeing things from a different perspective.
I feel extremely lucky to have kind of wound up in that. The timing of, the growing popularity of what I've been doing outside of the collaboration, just the right people being in control at Klipsch, and then the acceptance of me. I think that was really the a really important component was like, so, you know, the guys running Klipsch and the marketing people think this is a great idea, but, you know, will the engineers in Arkansas want to work with, because without that, there was no project. Without synergy there was no chance of the project being successful. And so, yeah, I was just, Roy Delgado is probably the most important person there. He spent the most time with Mr. K, as Roy calls him. He's just a really sweet person. And he welcomed me in, kind of just, first call, I really just kind of outlined what I wanted to do conceptually. You know, they're mostly making 3-way speakers, to make a stripped down 2-way speaker with modern drivers that have kind of made especially the super tweeter that most of the Klipsch heritage models have, just because that's part of their DNA, is really not a necessary component anymore. And a lot of what I do is about minimalism and stripping things down. You know, in hi-fi we do this all the time, but there's a real kind of less is more approach to designing really any kind of component. Like, whenever we can eliminate a component, we generally will, right?
Yeah.
Although, you know, you might look at these systems, they get huge, but usually that's because there are very few very high quality components that just by pure function happen big. And they also often need a lot of space. There's no better dielectric than air.
Right.
So, you know, where you can pack a lot of things onto a circuit board, but, you know, that very rarely can beat a point-to-point wired design with a lot of space.
Yeah, I mean, a case in point are these 4 objects behind you, right? And this is a dual mono tube-based phono stage with step-up transformers inside. And you're like, well, that's a lot of gear just for a phono preamp. But most of it is just to allow their design to have the room to breathe properly, and to have the physical separation between left and right. So it's a more complicated thing just because, you know, there are 4 boxes, but by having 4 boxes, it allows us to do things sonically that we wouldn't be able to achieve in 1 box. Whereas for like a speaker, you know, you've been doing a lot of single speaker designs as well, but if we could have a perfect single speaker design one way, it would be amazing, because then we don't have to worry about all the stuff we have to deal with when we go to 2 ways or 3 ways, which is crossover that becomes more and more complex, which inherently will take more and more away from the original signal.
You have inherent phase shift happening in the components in a crossover, and, you know, the more drivers you have, time alignment, like perfect time alignment is a impossible goal. And the more drivers you have, the more, you know, weird phase stuff you have. Yeah, so that's kind of the core of like the kO-R1 and kO-R2, is like, at what scale can we do these 2-way speakers? And then of course the horn designs are very unique. This horn is particularly unique component of this speaker. A lot of people that know my work and maybe know sort of a lot of other work that may be part of this sort of revival of classic, often theater or pro audio gear used as hi-fi, is sort of a philosophy. If I can write the history, it's a philosophy that comes from Japan, of kind of appropriating classic American theater gear, often very large, very efficient speakers, kind of tweaking them to work optimally with really low power amps. And again, this kind of minimalist system, it's quite counterintuitive to a lot of people, where they see a huge speaker and they think that, oh, there must be a huge system behind that speaker. But in fact, the bigger the speaker is, generally speaking, the more efficient it is. So the less power you need. You can just kind of whisper into it and you get a big sound. But a lot of people will know what's called a multi-cell horn. I have been working with originally the mostly the Altec multi-cell horns that are very iconic. There was a very famous guy, half French, half Japanese guy in France, who's named Jean Hiraga, who was one of the first people to kind of bring this philosophy to the West from Japan. He was the editor of a magazine called L'Audiophile in France, and he had the 15-cell Altec horn on their reference system that they compared, like Wilson's and all the state-of-the-art speakers to as a reference system, this Altec A5 system with the 15-cell horn. So that's a common reference for those things as well. But the work that I did with them has become, I think, very well known. So we actually make multi-cell horns as well in a workshop that I helped build with a friend, and they're very, very, very time-consuming to make. So I know I work closely also with a lot of ex-Altec engineers, and Bill Hanishak, who ran the last Altec factory, said Altec never stopped losing money trying to make multi-cell horns. It is a very expensive thing to do. So we've been experimenting heavily over the years on like how can we make these things more efficiently. And multi-cell horns traditionally are sheet metal that's soldered together, not welded, but like kind of soldered. And you have to have like a negative form, and you build each cell, and then you have to, you solder each side, the four sides of the cell together, then you solder them all together, then there's a manifold. It just takes a very long time to make them. So casting the elements is one way of making them more efficiently. So there's actually someone who used to work for Western Electric that I work closely with in Texas, who's a really important part of my team as well, Trey Lee, and he and I collaborate on a lot of these horn concepts together. So this is not a multi-cell horn. This is what we call a multi-sectoral horn. And it's kind of a hybrid between the multi-cell horn and a sectoral horn. Like you'll see, also Altec made a lot of very iconic sectoral horns, like the 511, 811, like those horns up there, exactly. So you see those horns, a lot of people will just say, oh, these are multi-cell horns. The difference is that they're not individual like horns. It's one horn with like these veins, like fins, that both stiffen and help with the directivity. And that's actually what these horns are. So these horns are cast in one piece. And these, you're welcome to touch them when you get close to them, but these are flat fins, not individual cells where there would be space in between each cell. So this is a totally original type of horn, and it's been really successful. It's got one of the things people ask, like, someone was just asking me outside, like, what is it that makes the image of the speakers sound so big? And a lot of it is this large horn mouth area. That for me is one of the kind of magical things. Not all horn speakers sound beautiful, in my opinion, but very large mouths sound really great, because you get something that you get only in maybe certain speakers, like electrostatic speakers, where there's just a very large point source. Right. For me, it's like a movie theater screen. It's like the difference between watching something at home on a very high definition screen versus going to the movie theater and seeing a film projected on a large screen. That's the kind of image that you get with a large mouth area like this.
Yeah, when we had these speakers in for the first time, we had it in that zone over there. We were testing out different amplifiers to find out what would be the most appropriate fit. And one thing that struck me immediately was the sense of scale. And it wasn't necessarily, like, a good speaker for me, what it does is it transcends the theatricality, right? So yes, you want to have the fun with it, you want to have the imaging with it, but at one point I also want it to sound like a real thing, right? If there is someone singing, I want it to be a person singing over there.
Shouldn't be high fidelity.
Yeah, exactly. And I put on my test track, which is this Jose Carreras track, and he moved exactly across the screen. Right, I mean the image, see I say screen, I'm imagining it, right? But he's just moving across the stage. And I'm like, you know what? No horn speaker does that easily. And we're just powering with an integrated amplifier, and you just saw him walk across. Like, this is incredible. So for me, like, I think the achievement of this horn is the fact that it doesn't, like, the attributes, the negative attributes of horns just are not exhibited. They're just a big open window into sound, which is my favorite attribute. So
Thanks,
kudos
thank
to
you, yeah. And then one thing about multi-cell horns is that they do have a high frequency roll-off. So where you have a multi-cell horn, you will usually have a tweeter. But this, not being a true multi-cell horn, has better high frequency extension as well. So it's where it lends to it being just a simple two-way speaker, but having this kind of like really big sound stage.
It works.
Thanks. Thanks for letting me crash the party. I wanted to, you know, Wes is gonna have to pack these speakers up and send them on to my next roadshow destination, but I had him out here for as long as I could, but I wanted to come in person to meet and greet some of you guys that might be curious about the speakers. I'm gonna come tomorrow, I think between maybe 2 and 4, hang out here. If any of you guys have specific nerdy questions or want to just pick my brain about anything on the speakers, then we can listen to all different kinds of music and stuff. And yeah, so, you know, Mario, again, thanks wherever you are. Again, like we were talking like a week ago, I was actually in Japan still, and Wes was like, well, we got this event next, what is it, Friday?
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just come for that. So last minute party crash.
It worked.
But yeah.
As we normally do, we do one hi-fi lesson. We got a little one here, but for today we're going to do something interesting. We have been listening to this system with this gorgeous Phase-Mation single-ended triode 10-watt amplifiers. We played around with tubes. It's all new old stock, plus L-Rogs, which unfortunately they're no longer made. As of last night, he closed his business. So those beautiful L-Rog tubes are no longer available, but you're hearing them here. But what we're going to do is we're going to showcase the difference between what 10 watts can do and what a lot of power can do on this. So inside this cabinet, I have
Not exactly a lot of power.
Well,
More power, a lot more power.
well, to give an example, right? The deadening factor of these, which is kind of like the sonic torque of those amps, is around 5. The dampening factor of the amp I'm allowed to play is 1,000. So I would say it's a little bit more powerful, just a little bit. Just right here, give me 2 seconds, we'll do the transition and we'll be back up and running.